an attractive bus station, that can only mean one thing. You're about to join me on a journey to Kremenchuk, so stay tuned for that. Welcome to another one of my videos. I am Alex and I am the wandering Englishman. On today's episode, Ukrainians put family first, something the West no longer does. It's like drinking the Dead Sea. It's the only way to describe it. And I think it's one of the things that really shines through when you meet the Ukrainian people. I want to thank my subscribers because you are the ones that made me come to Kremenchuk. And without asking the question on whether I should come to Kremenchuk to you directly, I would not have experienced the delights of this fine little city, which you're about to see in this video. Yo, so I've just arrived in Kremenchuk and I find myself in this little quiet neighborhood to the north of the city, and I find myself next to this beautiful church. Phenomenally beautiful church, really quiet neighborhood. You may have seen my video highlighting the apartment, unless it's included in this video, I'm not sure yet. But what I'm going to do is try and explore the neighborhood as best as possible. Well, not the neighborhood, the city. And let's see what we see. After a long journey on the road, a great way to ground oneself is to pop into the local church, or cathedral in this case. This cathedral was one of the few buildings not to be destroyed during the Second World War. I've heard reports that something between 95 and 97% of the city was destroyed during the Second World War, so it is a miracle that this place remained intact. Hence the reason it's worthy of a quick visit. Having just walked into that church, it gave me a reflection on the day. Incredibly bumpy bus journey from Prydniprovsʹkyy to Kremenchuk. Hopefully I'm not completely destroying the pronunciation of that name. But potholes the whole way. Imagine you just go da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's how you travel on certain roads in Ukraine. They are improving massively. And as you can see in the center, the roads are pretty good here. I shouldn't really be jaywalking, but I am.
Is there a problem, Officer Palumbo? Is there a problem? You ever heard of jaywalking? Yes.
So Kremenchuk supposedly gets its name from potentially two places. Krem means flint in Ukrainian. Flint is the stone. Flint can be found all over Europe. Or Kremenchuk is actually Turkish for little fortress. So there's a bit of a debate on which is which. In terms of exploring a city like this, most of these cities are in a grid pattern. And the reason they're in a grid pattern, the majority of the city, 90% in fact, and it's pretty much the same all over Ukraine, was completely decimated, well not decimated, destroyed by the Nazi occupation. The Nazis are occupied from like 1941 all the way up to about 1944 by the time they were getting pushed out. But it basically meant for the complete destruction of the city. Hence the reason any of these cities that you come to, you can walk in a grid-like pattern. But before the Nazis got here, if you imagine being here in the 1930s, the streets were windy, they were much more narrow, and due to obviously the Soviets sort of tried to make everything orderly, when the rebuilding of the city came, the streets were built in a sort of grid-like pattern, which makes it very easy to explore. I'm just heading west right now in the city, and this gets me to a park that I see on the map. What you see here is all completely new to me. I've only literally been in the city an hour. My bearings are from what the map in my head. So what we see around each corner is all new to me and new to you. I'm heading this direction because on the map there's an historical monument by the river. I want to check out what that historical monument is, sweep along the river a little bit, then come back into the east, and then see what else we can see. My fear is I'm not going to have enough time to explore the entire city. I may have to extend my time here by at least another night. I always find that you need 2 nights to explore a city like this, minimum. And so far, I've only got a booking for 1. I need to be back in Kiev very soon. Look at this randomness over here. There's a helicopter, which we're going to have a look at. Ukrainian men put me to shame. They're always working out, and they're always very strong people. This really is an impressive site, and this is clearly new. You can tell this is incredibly well manicured. This is probably only put here in the last couple of years, judging by at least the stone. Everything about this looks new. It wouldn't surprise me if this was potentially made in this area. This area is one of Ukraine's biggest industrial cities in terms of manufacturing. It's the manufacturing hub of the Poltava region. Maybe this was made here. I think this might be Ukrainian search and rescue, and given the close proximity to the water, given the close proximity to the hydroelectric dam, and then obviously the Black Sea, maybe this has put some use. Or maybe it's completely fake, I don't know. But it's beautiful. It's a common theme. I will pop into a little sort of delicatessen. I'll point in my best broken Russian, ask for something that looks reasonably tasty. Every time it's a different filling. This time it's almost like a croissant, but sometimes they've got cherries in, sometimes apples, sometimes meat, sometimes other things. You never really know. And here we are, the Dnipro River, first sighting of it. It's tasty though. Once I got to the centre, I was surprised. It's like a pâté. Every time it's different, honestly. If you're a vegetarian, you're going to struggle playing the roulette that I play. But it's good every time. As I walked along the left bank of the Dnipro River, I was reminded that the Dnipro River is Europe's 4th largest river. With a total length roughly of 1,400 miles, it flows through Belarus and Ukraine before hitting the Black Sea. I'm not sure where the Lenin monument would have been, but it could have been here. It could have been over here, which we're about to go to in a moment. But all of the Lenin monuments, the Stalin monuments, were pulled down in 2014 during the Maidan Revolution. It happened pretty much across the entire country. So you will not find many Lenin monuments still left standing in Ukraine. You have to excuse my voice. I've recently had COVID, and not only has it destroyed my taste, it has also destroyed my voice. But it turns out this is just a sketchy part of Kremenchuk. No Lenin monument was here. The square where Lenin was, we will see later. Honestly, apart from a tiny little breeze in the air, it's a really, really peaceful place. We've got a fairground over here with a Ferris wheel, very typical to all Ukrainian towns and Belarusian towns and Soviet towns. You'll find a bit of a fairground. Beautiful white sandy beach. Certainly beats the beaches that you see on the River Thames, that's for sure. Over here, this is the Ferris wheel over here. Supposedly that fish was symbolic, I think. I don't know. You probably can understand it, but just in case you can't, the Dnipro River is just over there, and it flows from up there all the way down to that way. But if you were to carry on up the river and keep going past Kiev, you would get to Chernobyl. And this, excuse the music from the fairground, this is a Chernobyl remembrance, to remember the victims of Chernobyl. A little bit like what we saw in Kremenchuk It's a very different take on it. And it should be remembered. Hopefully it never happens again, but we know it will. We know it will happen somewhere in the world. And when I say that it will happen again, I don't mean that it's going to happen in Ukraine. I don't mean it's going to happen in any of the Soviet countries. I mean, it will probably happen in a country around the world. I mean, for Christ, it happened in Fukushima in Japan. Japan being one of the most developed countries in the world. And it still managed to happen there. And Fukushima is now completely out of action because of it. Just walking away from the park, I always feel a bit weird if you start filming when there's lots of kids around, because it just feels inappropriate. But I tell you something, the Ukrainians put family first, something the West no longer does. There's plenty of things for families to do in Ukraine, there's plenty of activities for families. You can't really say that's true of a lot of Western countries, as the family unit is sidelined and families are not encouraged anymore. Whereas in Ukraine, large families are encouraged. I'm not staying here, but this is a classic old Soviet hotel there. 3-star hotel. Look at that, look at the star on that Viking ship. Quite impressive. And there's rusty balconies on this magnificent square that sadly has been turned into a large road / parking lot. The river's down that way towards the fairground. And then if we head up this way, we get into the sort of main street and the promenades, which I'm going to go down now. As you can see, Lenin used to have the view of this amazing hotel. This mural can be found next to the Museum of Folklore, which I didn't get to go to. I was fascinated by this building. It turns out this building used to be a restaurant pre-COVID called Nautilus, but before COVID, I'd love to know what this building used to be. I asked a few locals that were sitting around the area, they didn't seem to know. I do wonder if it was an industrial building or if it was purpose-built for a certain reason. I don't think it was originally built as a restaurant. And this are the Heavenly 100, those that died in Madden. You would have seen these faces on every single one of my videos in different cities. They're becoming quite recognizable now. Each one, someone who lost their life unnecessarily. There's many theories on what happened, but let's not go into that today. I'm more than happy to divulge theories on my blog. Beautiful monument here. And this is not for the Heavenly 100, this is for the period of 1933 to 1937. But as you see, more faces over here, because a lot of people died. I sound like Donald Trump though, possibly. You start recognizing all of these faces. Each one, a son, a father, a cousin, a brother, unnecessarily killed to change the regime, to change the power, to change the person in charge of the country. If you haven't clicked that like button on this video, do give it a like. It really helps the algorithm identify that this video should be seen by more people. Also, if you haven't clicked the subscribe button, do click subscribe. It is sincerely greatly appreciated. I appreciate every single one of my subscribers. By subscribing, it helps this channel grow, and it also allows this channel to be seen by more people. Well, I know I've only been here for a couple of hours, but the city's already surprising me. I was expecting sort of an industrial, gritty city. I couldn't be further away from my belief of what this place is. It's a really well manicured, beautiful city. Yes, where I arrived at the bus station, there were slightly gritty shops. So far, I'm fairly impressed. And this really is the focal point of the city. It is pretty much the center of the city. And I think what this represents, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is when the city was liberated from the Nazis. It was captured in 1941, and I thought maybe it was liberated in 44, but I think this represents the Soviets ridding the city of the Nazis in 1943. And what we see over here are all the men that fell between 41 and 45. You've got to remember, the Soviets didn't join the war until 1941, whereas the UK was at war since 1939. And effectively, without the Soviets, the Germans would have probably won. Yes, the Americans helped, but without the Soviets, the Germans would not have been defeated. The city was liberated on the 29th of September, and this day forevermore is celebrated in Kremenchuk as the liberation of the city day. And apparently, according to the locals that I spoke to, it is a wonderful day to be in the city. What struck me about these men on the wall was the fact that they're not just names. You can see what they actually look like, and I really, really like that. And I think it's really respectful to these brave men. This central promenade really is a focal point for families, and it is a focal point for the elderly. They've all kind of come out here on this beautiful June summer's evening, and it really is a nice place. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of France. I appreciate this is being tastefully designed post Second World War, but what they've done is quite beautiful, and you can see that it's been done in recent years. And I have to say, it's a city on first impressions that has a lot to offer. Just took in a really interesting pub there. It was called Liverpool. No relation to the football team whatsoever. Basically the owner, the guy that you saw smiling just there, he is obsessed with the Beatles, so he basically started a bar 20 years ago called Liverpool. I thought I was going for one drink, I went for more than one. Now I need some food. There's this funny thing about water in Ukraine. I requested tap water, so I pointed at the bottle, and I'm short-sighted, so I got Bojimi. Bojimi is effectively salty sparkling water. I kid you not, this is it's like drinking the Dead Sea. That's the only way to describe it. The Dead Sea spliced with the fisherman's catch. So apparently this is the #1 rated restaurant, so I get to try this. That's very spicy. Let's see. It's good. It's very good. Okay, why did I eat noodles in Kremenchuk? It is the #1 rated restaurant according to TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor is often wrong. Prime example of that is Sunny Beach. However, in this case, the noodle restaurant was very good. I highly recommend it, and I would probably give it high marks, just like it has got high marks. Totally recommend it. Great service, great food, very spicy. I love that. I'm getting it.
The next morning.
Morning. It's day 2. I decided that I'm going to stay an extra night. Only slight problem. I have to check out my place and check into another place. However, the man that I rented my place from was very nice, and he said, I can rent you another place just around the corner. So what I'm doing is, after lunch, we're checking out of that place and then checking into another place. I think it's worth probably 2 nights here because I really haven't seen everything so far. Had a fairly enjoyable night last night. Met some locals at a pub called the Belfast. I know, I went to a pub called the Belfast. Well, the train stopped and I'm at this place called the produce market. So I'm gonna go have a look. I've come hungry. I'm hoping there's gonna be good food inside. Let's see what we see. No food so far. I think I was in the wrong section. Over here is the produce market. So inside this old building we have all this sort of old produce, not old produce, fresh produce, meat, lots of meats. Good selection of meats. I'm inside, so wearing a mask. What's that? Also a lot of meat. Hello. Good selection of meats here. If I was a cook, I would dive right into this stuff, but I'm not. Oh, this looks good. Pig's trosses down here.
Давайте без сдачи, нет сдачи. Будет такое, даете без сдачи.
In a way, the mask is quite beneficial because the smell of meat is not something I'm too fond of, but this looks pretty good. Wow. Lots of pickled vegetables, pickled everything, pickled carrots, pickled... Wow. Hi. Lots of good cheeses, Ukrainian cheeses. Hi. Just looking. Good to see you. Is that chicken or filet? Chicken? It's like a... Okay. Wow. Hello. This is moloko or moloko? Moloko, wow. And then you made this cheese from this.
Да, з этого. Одна корова, одна мілка.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's amazing how it's all split up into sections. We've got the cheese sections, we've got the sort of pickled sections, we've got the... I'm looking for the fish section. Given the fact we're on the Dnipro River, maybe there'll be a fish section, I'm not sure. Or be fish probably from the Black Sea. Really decent mushrooms in Ukraine. You always get good mushrooms in Ukraine. Oh wow! I have to say the masks are quite restricted, but now we're outside. I think it's less needed. There's less need for a mask. Less people are wearing them. This market has everything. We've got flowers. We're looking for the fish still. We've got pigeons over there. This is pretty much the place to come. Forget your Tesco's, forget your Waitroses, forget your Whole Foods. Come here. You get your flower pots, you get your hanging baskets. I'll be honest, the smell here is much nicer than where the meat was. This is a nice place to hang out, just right here. Lots of ladies buying their flowers. Just to give you an idea on price, 15 is roughly about 30 pence. It's roughly about what it is. It's 38 to the pound, so that makes about sense. for this. 10 for a lettuce. 10 for a lettuce is cheap. 38 to the pounds, 32 to the dollar. Some beautiful strawberries here. I mean, literally anything you want. Good selection, good prices. Really good prices. We've got knives here for sale. A lot of the people use these for broomsticks. Still work. I think that's tobacco. Could be wrong, but I think that's tobacco. Amazing selection of vegetables, really amazing. Beautiful vegetables, all fresh, probably most of them organic. This is what we're missing. This is what you're missing. Still don't know where the fish is yet though. I'm sure I'll smell it soon. This is what smells amazing. We've got amazing spices. Spice people would know exactly what this is. Amazing. Hello. Amazing spices. Yeah, never recipe, but it smells good. Very nice. Спасибо. And here we have, I guess, what we would define as Turkish delights and sweets and dried fruits. Really, really nice. Getting a little bit hungry now. I am hungry already. Now I'm thinking maybe in here, this is where the fish might be. Let's have a look. It's a little bit like the Riga market. You may remember my video on the Riga markets, how everything was spaced out into different sections. Well, it's back on. Oh no, this is just a supermarket. There's no fish here. But you know what I am going to do? I'm going to buy some food. Really interesting concept. You go into the supermarket and there's chefs down below me cooking up all their food. You just don't get that in England. And I've got myself a sandwich for 19.90. It's about 60p. Well, I didn't get my food from the market, but maybe later, after the clock strikes 12, I'll go in here for a bit of wine. You name it, this market does have everything. You've got antiques to old electronics to books about UFOs to you name it.
Прямо, оно видно сырое, как красное такое.
So everything from kebabs to these fried things you seem to get in all the bus stations. And oh my god, these meats look good. Nice sausages or cheese. For people that don't like watering flowers, there you go.
Вообще не понимаю. Ты молодец.
Well, there's only so long I can look for a fish. I didn't find the fish, but I have to go check out so I can go and explore some monuments. Bit of a Kremenchuk traffic jam over here. This is one of the main streets. I came from the bus station, which is that way, and this is like the main sort of busiest street. Not like the boulevard that we saw last night. I mean, it really is a busy town. I mean, this is just a Wednesday. Hub of activity, that market, that section. There's markets everywhere, really. That seems to be the big market around here. And as we move away from the hustle and bustle, we're gonna go check out, then we're gonna go see some monuments. Some probably say that Soviet architecture and Soviet design is a bit brutal. I'll be honest, I like the way they design their blocks. Every single block, and I use this sort of American term for saying blocks, there's always a children's playground in the middle, there's always some sort of park, and there's always trees lining all of the roads, which helps cool the place in the summer. It just provides that sort of lovely sort of sound of the birds tweeting. Old versus new. Now this fine chap who actually shares the name of me, or I share his name, is Alexander Pushkin, and he's a famous Russian novelist, poet to be exact. And he's the reason so many people in Ukraine and Russia and Moldova and Belarus love poetry, because they've studied Alexander Pushkin's works. Beautiful statue of him. He was born a nobleman, so he was born into wealth. And by the age of 15, he'd written his first poem that had been published. And from that day on, he was celebrated. And he was a bit of a Casanova. And it was through the Casanova exploits. He was born in St. Petersburg, and he traveled throughout the Russian Empire. He spent a lot of his time living in Odessa. He also spent a lot of his time living in Chisinau. A man I can relate to, except he died at the age of 37. How did he die? Because he let women rile him up. A woman that he was chasing, or a woman that was part of his life previously, he couldn't bear to see with another man. So he challenged him to a duel. The duel kept getting postponed, but in those days, a duel was literally one bullet in the pistol. And what basically happened sometime, I think it was at a cold January, at the age of 37, he went up against this chap, probably should know his name, but he went up against him. The other guy fired first, it hit his hip, wounding him, and his shot only grazed the other guy's arm. And 2 days later, he died from the wound inflicted in his hip. If it had happened today, he probably would have survived. 2 days later, he died, and now he's celebrated here. And he's celebrated all over the old Russian Empire as simply a great poet. And if you get the chance to read his work, there's some amazing poems of his still worthy of your time today. But don't do what he did. Don't go out having a duel over a woman, that's for sure. a little bit rainy, and yet the eternal flame is still alight, and it is super hot actually. And this magnificent monument sort of helps us remember those that lost their lives during World War II, those that gave their lives so bravely, and those that fought, pretty much everyone in World War II. It has to be noted, Ukraine probably lost something close to 6.8 million people during the Second World War. 1.4 million of those were soldiers. The rest were civilians. When the Nazis came through here in 1941, the entire town were massacred by gun squads. The entire town were shot indiscriminately, taken off to work, taken away. Some were even enlisted, but the majority were killed, tortured, depending on their status or their rank. Ukrainians have had a tough history, a really, really tough history. And I think it's one of the things that really shines through when you meet the Ukrainian people. And I apologize, I'm terrible at bringing these people to life on camera. I know there's other people that produce content that brings the Ukrainian people to life, just to show you how friendly these people are. But these are tough people, really, really tough people. And they've been through so much. Their ancestors fought bravely, and it's with magnificent statues like this that we can't really forget them, what they sacrificed for what we have today. And I just love how powerful this flame is. This is obviously Russian gas, or it's coming from somewhere. It's super powerful. Obviously you wouldn't do that, but you could, because it would be incredibly disrespectful, but you could have a barbecue on that. It's providing a lot of heat. It's just been raining. Thankfully the rain has just stopped as I've stepped here. People are still remembered. I saw one review for this place that said, why do they have such pointlessly big monuments? Why did they not spend it on their roads or something like this? Well, this was built a long time ago, and rightly so they have big monuments. The Ukrainian people lost a lot of people, and because they lost a lot of people, we have to remember them. It shouldn't be like a little plaque on the wall over there to remember 6.8 million people and the destruction of a city that 90% of the city was destroyed. Massive monuments because it was a massive loss of life. So that's exactly why we have these massive monuments. This old building here, which was probably most likely built in the 1970s, maybe 1980s, has this amazing mosaic on the side of it. And this is the thing about old Soviet cities. They're obsessed with mosaics like this. And why not? This is something quite magnificent. I don't know what kind of story this tells. Maybe you guys can interpret it yourselves. But it's almost like the mother looking after the child. We got soldiers and knights. So in a way, it goes back to a past almost long forgot. At least that's how I read it. Honestly, if someone knows more about this mosaic, please let me know in the comments below, because I just went on Google, I just went on Wikipedia, I went on Google Maps, I couldn't find any information. I know that this center is something to do with child development, and they also teach dance and things like that, sort of like a multi-use center. But I'd love to know what this mosaic represents and when it was made. But I have a feeling it was made when this building was constructed. But fantastic. On this beautiful day, with the sun blazing, post the rain is now gone. You can see the bridge that I came in from. That bridge, if you would go that way, that brings you to Kremenchuk, to the town of Alexandria. Nice little restaurant here where two gentlemen are playing chess. And look at this beautiful white sand. I mean, this is the Dnipro River, and yet white sandy beaches. I imagine it's probably been shipped in and man-made here, but they've done it incredibly nicely. And what a peaceful day. This bridge reminds me of something you might find in the sort of rust belts of the US, possibly crossing the Mississippi. But in this case, this industrial town, in my mind, it excels itself. It's incredibly quiet. People keep to themselves, but in a pleasant way. I haven't seen any weirdness. I haven't seen people being angry. I've just seen people getting on with their lives, smiles here and there, people sort of saying hello or privet, and it's been incredibly nice. And the people that I did get to meet in some of the bars last night were fantastic, and I hope to do the same tonight. But all in all, I'm going to go see the Taras Shevchenko monument, which is just over there in the park, and then I think I've pretty much completed this city. Of course, I'm never going to complete the city. You could spend a lifetime completing it, but in terms of the major things, and I feel privileged to have taken this in and shared this with you. And what Ukrainian city would not be complete without us visiting Taras Shevchenko? We've seen him around in certainly a few places we've been to, and this is one of the nicest statues, I have to say. It's in great order. I like the fact that there's a signature there. He is considered to be one of the pinnacle sort of masters of the reason the Ukrainian language is what it is today. You know, a romantic poet and celebrated. Born at the beginning of the 19th century. I think he lived for about 41. And wow, this is a monumental statue overlooking the Dnipro River. People cycle past for all to see. Very pleasant area, very pleasant. And I think that's that. I'm going to head back to my apartment. I'm going to go shower. I'm going to go out for a few drinks. I'm going to have something to eat. Probably won't document much of that, if anything. Maybe I will. But if not, it's been fantastic coming to Kremenchuk. And I really appreciate the fact that YouTube audience, I think it was all 23 of you, the majority of you voted for me to come to this place as opposed to Murial, which I haven't been to yet. So hopefully that will be on future videos. All of these places in Ukraine are on potentially future videos, so stay tuned for that. Honestly, if you like this content, it really helps me if you click that subscribe button, click the like, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.